Yo, what is up, guys? Dummy Thick Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be discussing some gear that you absolutely want to get your hands on before the start of the fall season, and that's because it's being impacted very differently when it comes to gear sunsetting, and this was only unveiled recently by Bungie during a weekly update. If you just look at this stuff in-game, you would have no idea, and again, it's super important to get your hands on this stuff, and so let's get started. Now, what exactly am I talking about? Well, it's actually raid, weapons, and armor, and before you click off the video because you're a solo player, don't worry, I'm going to be going over how to get raid gear if you're a solo player, super easily, seriously. But my point is that raid sets from both the Last Wish raid and the Garden of Salvation raid, the weapons and the armor, Bungie only recently came out and said that those are going to be treated as if they just came out this season, in Season of Arrivals. So they're gonna last all the way until Season 14 when it comes to gear sunsetting. That is a big deal. Your stuff from those raids are going to be relevant for a whole other year longer than expected. In fact, this impacts all of the Destiny 2 raid armor in the game. Now you're probably thinking, that's great and all, Rick, but why does this matter so much? Well, it's because those raid armor sets are going to be the last armor sets in the game that are going to be able to be used in endgame activities all the way until Season 14, and are also able to equip enemy type specific mods, mainly armaments. So, the stuff from Last Wish can equip Taken armaments. Stuff from Garden of Salvation can equip Hive armaments. Stuff from Scourge of the Past as well as Crown of Sorrow can equip Fallen armaments. And those mods let you get your heavy ammo back for simply getting kills with grenades on those specific enemy types. It's not just armaments. Stuff like Taken Barrier, where you receive 20% less damage by being damaged by a Taken enemy. Guys, running Taken armaments and Taken Barrier is incredibly useful right now in the Prophecy Dungeon. And whenever you face those enemy types in the future, those armor sets are going to be the last ones in the game that are going to give you a massive, massive leg up when it comes to those sort of PvE activities. So getting your hands on them and being able to equip them when those activities are coming out in future seasons is just beyond important. Now, on that note, you can acquire some raid gear as a solo player, specifically with Last Wish. Here's how you do it. Simply load in solo and go to the Wish room. Then it's gonna take a little bit of time, but you're going to enter this specific wish. And you do so by just shooting the different symbols as they change, and you just keep shooting them until you get the right symbol. So if you have this exact symbol on screen, you stand in the middle platform, and it's going to teleport you to the Shirochi encounter, the second encounter. From here, as you can see, you can head backwards and skim along this massive bridge, and eventually you can drop down to this kind of rocky pillar. There's a little slit inside this rocky pillar, and if you drop down there, as you can see, there is a raid chest. Open it up and get raid loot from Last Wish as a solo player. The best part is that the chests specifically are actually how you get the mods in this raid. So you can potentially get, just a piece of armor and Taken armaments in one go, and you're set. Like, that is the important thing to have going into, future seasons. But if you can get a group together and actually do the whole raid, what loot are you looking for? Well, let's get started here with the Supremacy Legendary Kinetic Snipe Rifle. Looking at the stats, this belongs to the fastest firing, lowest damaging rapid fire frame archetype, but even though it is lowest damaging, it actually turns out that this is one of the best archetypes in the game when it comes to DPS. It also helps that this is a kinetic weapon, and taking a look at the perks, it has some very good perks when it comes to a dedicated PvE role. So you're absolutely going for an extended mag perk, so that's either extended mag, appended mag. Then you want mainly Ambitious Assassin. Overflows the magazine based on the number of rapid kills before reloading. So what you can do is, get some kills, reload, and have a massive 10 round plus magazine that you just then get ammo for, you're good to go, and then when you start fighting the boss, you lead off with that huge magazine. To be honest, Outlaw isn't terrible, and for PvP, Snapshot Sights is what you want. In that second perk slot, if you're going for the PvE god roll, it's gotta be Triple Tap. This is gonna increase your damage output significantly. Now, if you can't get that, Rapid Hit is a decent consolation prize, allowing you to reload quite a bit faster after you've gotten off a bunch of precision shots on a boss. And for PvP, Rampage or potentially Kill Clip are your choices there. So just a solid weapon, and again, one of the best DPS snipers in the game, especially if they end up buffing snipers at any point. Moving on from there, the next Last Wish weapon you want to keep an eye out for is the Nation of Beasts Legendary Energy Hand Cannon. Looking at the stats, it's just solid stats across the board, and it is a 140 RPM archetype. So not the best in PvP currently, but in PvE, that's just a solid, good all-around archetype. Looking at the perks here, the curated role is actually the Fatebringer role of Outlaw plus Dragonfly, which is not bad. But in the random perk pool, we do have some just good barrels and decent choices when it comes to accurized or extended megs and steady rounds and stuff like that. In the first perk slot, Outlaw is a great choice with hand cannons. Opening shot is what you want if you do want a PvP role. Then in that second perk slot, you really can't go wrong. Kill Clip, phenomenal, especially when you combine it with Outlaw. Explosive Payload does absolutely disgusting things when it comes to extending a hand cannon's range, especially good in PvE, I find. Rampage to increase the damage just works very well with a hand cannon, and even Triple Tap is not a terrible choice either. It's just an incredibly solid weapon that you can feel comfortable masterworking and using for the next year, honestly, if you enjoy using hand cannons. Moving on from there, the last wish weapon we're going to talk about is the age-old Bond Legendary Energy Auto Rifle. Now, looking at the stats, this does belong to the somewhat rare high impact frame archetype, so highest damaging, slowest shooting. The stats kind of reflect that with terrible stability but insane range. Moving on to the perks, however, the curated role, and remember the curated roles kind of drop a little bit more commonly for raid weapons, so it's not that unreasonable to go for these. You actually do get 4th times the charm combined with Rampage. That is the perfect combination. That's going to let you just extend your magazine massively and keep up Rampage, especially by throwing on a Rampage spec. Very solid weapon and one I enjoy using. Looking at the random perks, however, we've got some decent choices. I would kind of go for ricochet rounds to increase that stability, a barrel to do the same as well. That's where you need help. Then we have in the first perk slot, dynamic sway reduction, or tap the trigger, or Zen Moment. All of those 3 perks are going to assist this weapon in just being more accurate and being more usable at ranges that it's actually massive range lets you engage enemies. Triple Tap is not a bad consolation prize if you don't get the curated role with 4th times the charm as well. In the second perk slot, Kill Clip is not bad, but doesn't really synergize with any of the first perk slot options. High Impact Reserves and Ambitious Assassin are okay, but honestly, Dragonfly, especially with a hard-hitting auto like this, is not a terrible choice. But at the end of the day, I think the curated role is the best version for PvE. Like for PvP, it would be something like Dynamic Sway Reduction plus maybe High Impact Reserves, but yeah, not necessarily where the focus of this weapon lies. Now, moving on from there, we have the Garden of Salvation raid. The 3 weapons I'm going to recommend trying to get a hold of there, and these don't necessarily have the same kind of curated roles you're going for when it comes to the last wish weapons, include firstly the Reckless Oracle Legendary Energy Auto Rifle. So looking at the stats, this belongs to the rapid fire frame archetype, which means lowest damage, fastest firing, the stats are actually pretty good with really great stability. Then looking at the perks, honestly, it's hard to go wrong with this weapon. So ricochet rounds I would be going for, as well as some sort of ballistics that extend the range, because that's where this gun does suffer. Then in that first perk slot, Outlaw is pretty darn good. Auto-loading holster isn't terrible, honestly, and under pressure isn't the worst either. But it's that second perk slot that's truly amazing. Kill Clip is great, especially when you combine it with Outlaw. Swashbuckler is just great all around for easy damage increases. Demolitionist is actually what you want to go for, simply because firstly, it's a good perk on its own, getting your grenade back more often, and then throwing a grenade will instantly reload the magazine, which matters when you have 51 rounds in the magazine natively. But also, this is a void energy weapon, which means that if you use it on a warlock with the Nezarec's Sin exotic helmet, it will trigger that by doing void damage, and it has Demolitionist, which really synergizes with the Devour tree, and that gets your grenade back too. So having both of those things going means that, with 2 kills of this weapon, you get your grenade back. Absolutely insane. But yeah, triple tap's okay too. Anyways, moving on from there, the next weapon we're covering is another hand cannon, the Ancient Gospel Legendary Energy Hand Cannon. Looking at the stats, it's yet another 140 with just great stats all around. Really, the key one here is the recoil direction. 100, flat 100. This thing recoils basically purely vertical, which makes it one of the easiest hand cannons to use in the game. I've said before that if you don't like hand cannons, the Ancient Gospel is the weapon to change your mind. Looking at the perks here, we've just got some unbelievably good choices. It's very hard to get a bad roll of the Ancient Gospel. So in that first perk slot, you've got Rapid Hit, very good with hand cannons, getting faster reload and improving the stability for getting precision shots, which is what you always do. Slide shot is not terrible to get magazine and range increases too, especially in PvP. Outlaw is an all-star as always, and Eye of the Storm has actually proven itself to be pretty good in PvP, especially on consoles. In that second perk slot, you've just got all-stars all around. Kill Clip, phenomenal with either Rapid Hit or Outlaw. Then you've got Swashbuckler, great with the same. Then you've got Dragonfly for PvE ad clearing. And lastly, you've got Rangefinder, a PvP all-star. So, especially if they ever buff 140s, getting a Reckless Oracle with, a range extending barrel and then accurized rounds, Eye of the Storm plus Rangefinder, it's gonna be amazing. But the PvE rolls of Rapid Hit, Outlaw, and Swashbuckler or Kill Clip, and frankly those work in PvP too, are just so incredibly solid. And then the last weapon we're going to cover is the Sacred Provenance Legendary Kinetic Pulse Rifle. Now looking at the stats, this actually belongs to the somewhat rare Aggressive Burst archetype, which actually means that this weapon shoots bursts of 4 instead of the traditional 3 that most pulse rifles do, and the stats are generally pretty decent. But looking at the perks, this is where things get a little insane. So we've got our normal assortment of barrels and then rounds and so on. I would kind of be going for ricochet rounds because it needs a little bit of help in the stability and range department, both somewhat with this weapon. Then in that first perk slot, great choices here. So Rapid Hit is especially amazing with a 4-round burst weapon, because 1 burst to an enemy's crit, which is not uncommon for a pulse rifle, means you're already at Rapid Hit times 4, and that increase to stability matters quite a bit and therefore makes it a better choice than something like Outlaw, which is also good and also easy to trigger but provides less benefits. You also do have full auto trigger system, which isn't terrible, and Rangefinder is okay at best. Then in that second perk slot, well, here you don't honestly have the best options. You're really going for Kill Clip. This thing with Kill Clip and Rapid Hit or Outlaw is a terror in PvP and also is not too shabby in PvE as well. It's just a very solid weapon all around and one of the highlights of this raid for sure. And so guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at @RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.